Hello and welcome everybody to the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice 2018. We are live from the ESL Arena here in Katowice, Poland, and over the course of the next 6 days, you'll be witnessing some amazing Starcraft 2 matches. We'll be starting with 64 players divided into 4 double elimination brackets. At the end of tomorrow, only 12 of those players will move on to the group stage. There's some amazing players here like Scarlet, the recent IEM Pyeongchang champion, as well as on stage we have TY looking to defend his title as a Katowice champion from last year. There's no doubt we'll be witnessing some amazing matches with the caliber of players here. To walk us through the amazing games, we have some of the best experts in the world. Kalaris, take it away.
That's right, thank you very much, Smig. Some of the best experts in the world and me joining you here as we get things going at the analysis desk. The competition is going to be very fierce here at Katowice once again. 2017 was no short of amazing, and 2018 is going to be fantastic as well. To my right-hand side, getting things going, we do have the experts Smix was speaking of. We have Pig, Artosis, and Rotterdam to join us to start things off. And Rotterdam, I'm going to start with you. As I said, 2017 was great, 2018 is going to be phenomenal.
It really was, and we're not saying that because we're standing here and we say that all the time because we want to hype up a tournament. 2017 Katowice really was one of the most awesome, if not the most awesome tournament of the year. The format was something we hadn't seen yet before. It worked out fantastically. We had so much fun here at the desk, hopping into all those different games as well. And it's just so cool to not just see the top 8 win money or not just the top 16, but actually see these really deep payouts. And you can see that as well, that it's not just us who thought the tournament was cool, because this year the open bracket is way more stacked than last year. That's of course because all those players at home are watching like, wait a minute, top 16, like why am I not there? I love it. I'm so excited for these next 2 days and obviously the overall tournament, but even the open bracket, it feels like 2 or 4 unique tournaments aside, and I'm just excited to be here.
Definitely sounds very good, and we've lured Artosis out of South Korea as well. My friend, excited for everything?
Well, I mean, you just look at the caliber of player here. Almost every single one of the top players in the world is in this tournament.
Yeah.
Like, the first group that we're going to be going through, this first big bracket, that in and of itself looks like a regular IEM. So it's pretty wild when you actually look at it. We're really going to get the best player in the world coming out on top here and winning that spot in BlizzCon.
And there was no lowering required when it came to Pig, of course. We only had to get him on a 30-hour or so flight over here to Poland. Is it about 30 hours or am I?
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah,
you know,
thereabouts.
if there's one tournament, it's worth it. Though this is definitely it. This is the one where you come through and we have expectations, but this tournament goes for so long. There are so many games. We actually get to see so many storylines develop from the players throughout the event. So I know even within 2 or 3 days, a lot of our expectations are just going to be washed away in the wind. There's going to be upsets. There's going to be surprises. Same thing as last year around. We had people like Alive come out and show amazing performances.
Right.
Gumiho started his ascendance at Katowice a year ago. So honestly, I'm just excited to see who comes out and shows up, and the games are going to be incredible.
Definitely are. All right, thank you very much, gentlemen, as we are ready here for 2018, ready to begin the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice.
Welcome to the Hacks Pre-Show.
All right, let's break everything down as we do have 76 players going to be greeting us with their presence throughout the next couple of days. Of course, we have our 4 brackets that we're going to be covering throughout the next 2 days, of course, here. But let's talk about the tournament as a whole. $400,000 on the line, $150,000 for first place. It's no small potatoes by any stretch of the imagination, Rotterdam, and that's why all of the best players have come here to Katowice to compete for this amazing prize.
This prize pool is just ridiculous. If you compare it to the 2011, 2012 days, you know, you had some days 100 people travel to the event with like $11,000 overall. Now we're looking at $400,000 tournaments. Like I mentioned before, the top 60 gets paid. I think there is 50,000 on the line for people like outside of the top 16, from like rank 17 to like rank 60. I think it's awesome. I love the payout, and it was not just the money that's awesome for this tournament. We got a bunch of cool skins out of it as well.
That's true. Yes, we definitely did get those war chests rolling. It was very nice indeed. And looking at how the tournament breaks down itself, you know, you guys were alluding to the fact that we have a lot of big names in these open brackets, but we can talk about some of the players that have already qualified through later on into the group group stages, you've got massive names. One that really stands out to me was how Classic was able to move through the Korean qualifier with massive names in that qualifier, but he just was able to power through. So very impressive stuff.
He's in top form right now. Truly, he is. He's in the round of 8 in GSL Code S right now.
Yeah.
He's just looking phenomenal. And right alongside him there as well, SOS, second place from IEM Pyeongchang, winningest player. This is worth more than $100,000, right? So
Yeah.
he's got to be a favorite.
Definitely has to be, with that 150,000 for first place pick. Looking at the players that have actually qualified through as well, you've got some big hopes when it comes to the non-Korean environment. You've got people like Elaser in there as well, so
Yeah.
a lot of big, powerful names.
I mean, it's always cool. We're here in Poland, and of course, Elaser is a guy who a couple of years ago was kind of climbing up the ranks, and now he's made it to the semifinals of the World Championship. He always seems to bring his A level, but especially here in front of the Polish home crowd, it's always a very special opportunity. Of course, players like Nurchio and so on have always had a big history here, but I think Elaser is really the one who's carrying the torch for Poland right now. He's the most consistent. He's been in Korea training so hard, so I think he's probably in the best form he's ever been.
Well, let's take a look at the brackets for today at least. We have 2 brackets that we're going to do today. We have bracket number 1 and bracket number 2. These will be 16-man double elimination brackets to qualify players on through to that group stage, which will be happening later on in the week. Gentlemen, looking at bracket number 1, what jumps out for you? I can see a few names there that are pretty big.
Dude, this is just crazy when you look at it, right? Like, you have Stats and Maru on the same side of the bracket. These guys are about to play in the GSL Code S round of 8.
Yes.
And then you have the defending champion of Katowice in TY. Like,
And
this
is a
bracket's
bracket.
too crazy.
This is just a bracket.
I mean,
only 3 people qualify.
Stats was second in 2017
Oh my God,
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So those
That's
two
true.
were not able to
Oh.
go through the Korean qualifier. They had to come here to the open bracket to try and defend their previous spots.
Yeah, but to give some love to some of the other names in that bracket, it's not just the Koreans that are very scary. I mean, you have Ryung there as well, who's also, of course, Korean and scary.
Yes.
But you're also looking at 3 foreigners who've done nothing else other than play StarCraft in Korea over the last 14 days.
Yeah.
You see Stephano there, you see DnS there, you see Pock there. These are all people that have really gone all out and they all want to shine here. And like he said, only 3 of them will actually advance to the main tournament. It's brutal, but it's going to be really fun for us.
And actually, DnS versus Stephano will be our first match later, so we won't talk about that too much just yet. We can allude to that and talk about it a bit more later on. But Pig, looking at that first bracket, looks amazing.
It's kind of like a prelude to Nation Wars almost. You've got like so many French flags and so many Korean flags in that bracket, and these are 2 of the teams which often, you know, have the biggest kind of national representation in
Besides
Starcraft.
the Netherlands,
So.
of course.
Sorry?
Besides the Netherlands.
Oh, I mean,
alright,
sorry. I mean, we'll see how Euthermal does. He's actually, to be honest, speaking of that, Euthermal, someone who I've got my eye on, is looking really, really hot this tournament. But personally, Stephano stands out as someone who's been training hard. And, you know, it's funny because we were chatting to him yesterday and he's kind of talking a little bit about how he's knuckling down, he's cutting out, you know, anything except hard practice. But really, what I've got my eye on is, like, he just looks like he's in better shape than he's been for a long time. And honestly, if he can make it past DnS there, I think Stephano has a good shot in the Zerg vs Protoss matchup right now.
To touch upon that real quick, I really feel like we're looking at a new man when we're looking at Stephano. I don't really know what's going on, but he didn't even want to come and hang out with us in Korea once we were there. He's like, sorry, it's too far away. I need to practice. He was here yesterday as one of the very few players to practice, and this morning, first man to show up, it's Stephano. Like, I don't know, maybe it's true. Maybe we are looking at a new man, and he seems really confident as well, so I'm really excited to see how he does.
And there's nothing scarier than the idea of a Stephano who is focused, considering his history in StarCraft.
Well, he's one of the biggest names we've ever had, one of the most accomplished non-Korean players we've ever had.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, when he was active, he was one of the guys that could beat everybody. And then he, like, went half active, I want to say. He was retired, you know, in quotations.
Right. Yeah.
You know, still top 16 GM from time to time in Europe, but now that he's, like, actually back, taking it seriously, I was talking to him a bunch yesterday.
He's very serious.
His mindset is really on point. Like, he's really thinking about all of his matches and planning ahead, and I'm excited to see where he can go, because a Stephano in shape is someone that I think everyone can get behind.
Absolutely. A few big Protoss names in there as well from the non-Korean scene. People like Pro, people like Puck, going to be kind of pushing themselves here. Even T. Drogo, from another French name here.
Another player that has been practicing in Korea as well. I think I didn't even mention him. It's ridiculous. Like all of these guys, they have all gone all out. This is not just another tournament on the agenda for a lot of these guys. This is really a tournament they've been working towards. And I mean, now it's D-Day, right? Let's see if all that practice was worth it.
I think it's fair to say every single one of our open brackets here is going to be a mini world-class tournament in itself, then feeding into this grand thing that is the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice, right?
It's massive. I mean, for all of the players, they know this isn't an easy road, but this is the point where you can really make a name for yourself. Just making it to the group stage of this tournament is in of itself a massive achievement. Like last year we saw Cyril make it to the group stage and people were already saying, you know, this is great for him. A few other players did. And they made it through, and sometimes some of them just got knocked out. You know, 0-6 kind of in the group stage. They didn't do that well. But already you have to beat so many good players just to get to that stage. So the players are going to put it all on the line. This is one of these opportunities. It's not just a regular run-of-the-mill tournament. This comes around once a year.
Yes.
If they can make a name here, it's going to be massive.
All right, well, let's take a look at bracket 2. We could talk about bracket number 1 for what seems like hours at this point for the players, but we have another bracket that we will be covering today. And again, big names. Who stands out to you? I see 2 Zergs in particular in my mind that really do.
It's the Zerg bracket, really, when you look at this. Like, so many big Zerg names. And the thing is, there's other strong players here. People like Trust and Creator that can sometimes go on a run and show great games. But Scarlet is on fire recently.
Yes.
She's killing it. She actually looks like the best player in the world right now.
Living up to her Twitter handle.
You want to fight me on that, Roddy? She looks like the best player in the world right now.
I'll fight you on a lot of things, but I'm not sure if I want to fight you on that one just yet, because he indeed has been looking absolutely amazing. But this is indeed one hell of a Zerg bracket. You look at Cyril, then you look at Linux, you look at Solar, and then even the outsiders for this bracket, I look at guys like Minato and Zenster. They're also Zerg, and they're also really good.
Yes.
Of course, Mana in Poland, it's Guru in Poland as well. It's just another really fun bracket.
You know, with the way this bracket's actually looking, the way I can actually see it is Zanster, especially someone I have my eye on. His Zerg versus Protoss, a bit of a specialty. And I think in that lower bracket, if he can, you know, gets knocked out by Scarlet, we're probably thinking she's the favorite there. There's a good chance he has to go through a Creator or a Trust to get through in that final qualification spot. So I think Zerg versus Protoss for Zanster there, he does actually have a surprising shot. So even though we see him as definitely an underdog, I think he's actually got a decent shot here.
Another player, by the way, that was in Korea training really hard up until recently. I mean, it feels like everyone's picked up the pace in the last year. Like last year we came here, it didn't feel like there was quite as many of the top level Koreans. There was still quite a few, but this year you look at it, these non-Korean players are like, oh yeah, no, Zanster can beat these Protoss players. Scarlet, she might win the tournament. You know, it's pretty wild. And we haven't even been talking about Cyril, who's also in that bracket. Exactly. That's how stacked it is.
Really important moment though for the foreigners, I'd say, in this bracket, because if this would end up with 3 Koreans advancing, I think that's a little bit of a Debbie Downer for the foreigners.
Yeah.
Because you look at, we have some of our biggest names there. We've got Scarlet, we've got Cyril, and then other good players that are very well respected. The guys like Mana, Guru, Zanster, Optimus is in it as well. And if it would end up with 3 Korean Zergs, like True's in there as well. We haven't even mentioned True.
I know.
I mean, we all know that True is dangerous if he actually feels like making some links and go far. This is just an exciting one because this is really a do or die moment almost for the foreign scene. Like, let's see if we are as good as we think we are, right?
Yeah.
Because lately there's been a lot of boosting about how much the non-Koreans have improved. Well, let's see.
I mean, when you look at how the WCS circuit and the system has worked out for these guys, the Korean foreigners' house that they're able to utilize so well, that really has turned things up to 11 for them coming into 2018, especially.
There's no doubt about that. We've seen them really rise up in skill. Everyone seems to be gaining like a lot of confidence in their play and just kind of like ironing out all the details. And if you just go talk to anyone who's been staying in the house, have spent any amount of time there, they're like, oh yeah, I learned a few things. I learned a few things over there practicing with everybody.
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy situation for them. What about, again, Polish representatives that we do have in this bracket? You've got yourself, your Mana, your Art, your Guru. They're not exactly the names that you, in this bracket, think to yourself, they're going to be able to power through considering everybody else that's in there. But the opportunity to play in front of a Polish crowd here at Katowice that we know is voracious. They love to get behind their Polish players, so they'll just biting at the opportunity to get a chance at play in front of them.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit unfortunate for Mana to be facing so many Zergs in his bracket because it's a matchup he struggles with, because he's the guy who you think of as the one who we sometimes have counted out in the past. Go back to the end of 2015, WCS Season 3. It was in Krakow in Poland.
Yes.
And he's just surprised everybody. He made it through. He ended up winning the entire season. Of course, second
place.
Second behind Lilbao, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's right.
Made it there, of course, after an incredible run. And we kept saying, oh, he's going to go out in the group stage. He's going to go out in the round of 8. And the thing is, you add the home crowd, suddenly Mana, he can just turn it on. But against this many Zergs, it would be truly heroic, I think, with how he's been struggling in that matchup.
Yeah, I'm feeling you, James, and obviously we want to celebrate the story of the Polish players, but in this bracket, for me, they are two clear outsiders. They are guys who can absolutely make it like top 6, and don't forget, there's a lot of money on the line just making it a little bit deeper in your bracket. And I think if any of them would make it into the top 5 of this bracket, I think that would already be an amazing run. But to be honest, I'd be shocked if I see either Guru or Mana in the top 3.
Right.
But I'd love to be wrong.
Yeah, definitely. Your thoughts looking overall when it comes to even any of these brackets, to be honest with you, Artosis?
They're just sick brackets. I mean, there's going to be a lot of great matches. I remember, I think specifically last year in the group stage, or the bracket stage rather, wasn't Guru versus Mana like a sick match that we were covering up here at the desk?
It happened twice?
I think it was a long one, if I recall.
It was a long, epic series. So, like Pig was saying, if Mana turns it on, maybe he can make that run, because we know, like, deep down inside of him, he's a really top-class player. He just doesn't always deliver.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing to kind of keep you guys up to date and with information on is that, not dissimilar to last year, we will be updating you with almost as many games as possible here. Gentlemen at the desk are going to be kind of honing down and getting into a lot of these games as they continue on. In our first bracket, of course, I think we have TY covered, we have Stats covered, we have Drogo versus Puck covered as well. And our first match will be DnS going up against Stephano. So let's talk about that a little bit. DnS going up against Stephano, good old France versus France. It's kind of old versus new when it comes to France. Old blood from France going up against new blood in DnS, who has proved, especially online, that you cannot take him lightly, I think.
I think you say that correctly, especially online. DnS has really been a force to be reckoned with in the online competitions, even winning a couple of them, which included a bunch of Korean players, while he was also in Korea, so there wasn't even like latency advantage or whatever. But DnS still has to show it offline, and I do absolutely believe in DnS. I am convinced that in 2018 he is going to have a deep and successful run in one of these big events or a WCS event. Could be this one, James, could very well be this one, but it's going to be very tough, I think, especially because he's going up against Stephano, and we just praised Stephano a whole bunch, so we're not just going to throw that out of the window now. This Stephano, we're looking at a new man. We're looking at somebody who is more focused, and I've seen him in a long time. He seems very professional, and that's not a word that I would have used with Stephano in the past. So it's going to be a very tough, and I mean, overall these brackets, like Dan says, there's 6, so it's so hard to predict that DnS is going to make it out. But if he plays half as well as he does online, he's got one hell of a shot.
Yeah, I mean, we watched him go through the qualifiers for Pyeongchang, I believe it was, as we were casting that Rotterdam. So what do you guys think of DnS versus Stephano?
He doesn't really bring it offline quite yet. And again, like Roddy says, he will break out eventually. When you're at this level, you just keep going to tournaments, and one of these times, you are going to be able to pull it out. But
yeah, it feels like the Serral story almost.
Yeah.
We had so much Serral online. When's he going to be able to do it offline? And then eventually it did happen. Is that something that could down the line happen for someone like DnS?
It could happen very soon. You know, it's been building up for a while. And I think when you add that team house practice, that Korean environment practice, and these online wins that we're talking about, suddenly that confidence builds up. And I don't think anyone always performs at 100% at these tournaments, right? But suddenly you can perform 90% and still make it through a round and get a bit more confidence. And then, you know, you can kind of ramp up that confidence. And I think definitely there's a psychological aspect. DnS came up in the scene when Stephano was the top dog. He was the king of Starcraft internationally. So there's definitely going to be a little bit of a psychological battle to not get in his own head against the past hero. But I think they've been living together. They're friends. I think realistically, if DnS can just show what he's been practicing for, he's got a very good shot there.
And actually, when I looked at it, as we just need a minute or two more before we actually go to the commentary team for this game, is that I was very surprised to look up the statistics between them, which is 7-2 in series in favor of DnS, who didn't really play that many tournaments when Stephano was in his true heyday. As Pig was saying, he was just kind of rising up and probably watching and idolizing Stephano, from afar. So that's quite a surprising turn of events.
It is more one-sided than you would perhaps expect it, but I also think that goes back to the period that Dan just mentioned, where there was a period where Stephano was active enough to still win a little bit of money, a couple hundred here, a couple hundred there, and DnS was going all out. So I think at that point you're looking at a much more focused DnS and a rather 50-60%-ish Stephano. Right now you're going to see the best Stephano that he can possibly be at this very moment. He could perhaps get even better because he's shown us in the past. But as good as he is right now, he really doesn't have many more, much more potential to get better than he currently is. He's been doing everything he can, so I don't think we should look too much into those stats. And don't forget that the current patch, we haven't been playing on it that much. I highly doubt that they've played a couple times in this patch already, and things have changed a little bit in the Zerg versus Protoss matchup, James.
Well, we're about to find out. Thank you very much, gentlemen, as we are almost ready here for game number 1, series number 1 of the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice 2018.
And we are about to hop into our game. This is going to be a very exciting match, a bit of a David versus Goliath matchup here. Stephano, such a storied player, but if DnS can pull it off here, it's going to be huge.
Yeah, DnS definitely the player who, as of late, should be doing better than a Stephano, who's having a little bit of a resurgence, being very motivated himself. The desk talk extensively about how he's been training hard and taking the game very seriously, which for him hasn't always been the case. Even in the days he was doing really well, he wasn't known as one of those guys, that was necessarily playing the most or always being rigorous with the hours, that he was showing up at, and just the manners that he was going about, playing these tournaments. Whereas now, it seems like he's very motivated these days.
It's funny because I know we have pro gamers all the time say they're going to retire and move on, and some do come back. But when Stephano said he was going to retire, I actually took his word for it. Now he's back. He was just in Korea for, I want to say, about 19 or 20 days, just grinding at the non-Korean team house there. And he seems to be coming here with a very ambitious mindset. And we may be seeing Stephano 2.0. And I'm curious then, how far can he actually get in a tournament like this? DnS, he's obviously a very great player, but you're hard-pressed to find players that are more legendary than Stephano, especially outside of Korea.
And you took his word for it. Come on, man. It's StarCraft. Nobody ever retires from StarCraft.
Yeah,
they'll come back.
This is actually, it's funny because all the way back in early Brood War, people would be like retiring, and it would be on like Gosu Gamers or one of these news sites at the time, and then you'd see them online the next day. It's like, seriously? You just did an interview?
You're like 2 clicks away from coming back to a game.
Yeah,
like, nobody ever retires, all right? Especially not from the best game, StarCraft.
But seeing Stephano grinding that hard in Korea, a lot of players, they'll come out to Korea, but they want to do some sightseeing, they want to hang out. No, Stephano basically grinded every day and says he's come here equipped with a lot of different builds and strategies to dismantle this insane lineup that we have. This tournament, you can't get more players in this. Everybody is here.
Absolutely, yeah. And Stephano, he had a very cool series, actually, just not too long ago, a couple days ago, over at the Intel Extreme Masters Pyeongchang. He played Zest in round 1, which is a pretty tough draw, and he actually won game 1. So he showed that he still has a little bit of brilliance in his play, and that's, when it matters the most. Like, obviously, he was a 1 and 3. I mean, he was facing Zest, like one of the absolute best players in the world. But now going up against a DnS who he knows very well, I don't think it's hopeless or anything by all means for Stephano. I really feel like if he's feeling well on the day and playing well, he's going to have a real chance.
And it looks like we are now moments away from getting our first match underway. Stephano versus DnS. The journey begins now, Todd. In a tournament that's this huge with this many players, it's crazy because it is such a marathon. There are tournaments where it takes months to complete and you have all this time to prep. You really have to be ready for everything and everyone coming into this. And we are now in our game, introducing our first player in the bottom left, in the blue. He is Stephano.
Game pause.
And well, I'll intro him after the pause is done. Took the wind out of my high sails right there.
Putting you to the
so
test.
we have a quick pause here. When our players are ready, we will be jumping into this match. sometimes this happens where there's some setting that's a little bit off, or, some sound issue, and we have to get those adjustments made.
You want to get everything perfect when you play in a tournament like this. You want to play as well as you're playing at home. If that means coming in your pajamas and playing in them, then so be it.
My bright brother used to bring his computer chair to tournaments. He wanted to play in the same chair. He would actually put it in the car, drive all the way with that to whatever event he was at.
Was it like a very specific chair that you couldn't find at venues and stuff? Or?
I'm trying to remember. It was different than what you'd get in a computer cafe, but that's what he wanted. So perhaps there's some kind of hotkey setting or something off. But you got to respect that when you have players like this, and something's not right. I mean, how are you going to play a series that may take well over an hour to complete? And once that is sorted out, we'll be hopping back into this.
Here's DnS on your screen was a second ago. Definitely one of those guys that has been around for a long time, but he took him some time to finally get at a higher level. You know, obviously a lot of games, and he's one of those guys that over in Europe takes the game almost like the most seriously out of, you know, as many players as we have there. Like he's been playing in a team house. He already was. Back when Lilbo was very successful, they made a house with the 3 best French Protoss players, which were Lilbo, T-Drogo, and DnS at the time. And DnS was trailing quite a bit behind the both of them. Now things have changed very heavily. You know, Lilbo, he retired from Starcraft, moved on to Overwatch. I say he retired, but he'll be back.
He'll be back. You just wait.
T-Drogo has fell off a little bit. He's having a little bit more trouble posting results. So DnS is really like almost like, you know, the one French hope that we have a little bit more that could do very well as far as Protoss goes in this tournament.
Well, this is what's so cool about this. Esports is about 20 years old, starting with the original Starcraft 1. But, you know, as each year passes, you see some players that rise up in the ranks and then fall back off. And then there are other players who are usually younger and newer. They eventually reach their height, and that's what we're curious about with DnS here in this tournament. And I'll intro him right now. In the upper right, in the red, he is DnS.
It was worth the wait, taste this.
That's right. I was building my energy. So, to start things off, immediately we have a pylon blocking Stephano's first expansion location. He can expand elsewhere, but that is something that can be a nuisance. We now see the pylon canceled as the probe pulls out.
Yeah, Stephano being very patient with this. He obviously didn't want to rush that, so he's like, you know what, I'll take my sweet time, get a lot of drones, which is almost like unusual how many drones he's made without really starting. I think he's not there. Yeah, he's not there. Yeah, he hasn't started anything. Okay, I was like trying to make sense of that.
Okay, so something is not right here because we're looking at about 950 minerals. And okay, I was like,
it's not a new build.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's not a strategy. You can't pay for your kids' college funds with that money. You got to spend that, and especially in the first 2 or 3 minutes.
I was like, what is he gonna do? Start triple hatchery at the same, like take 10 bases on the map. He tried to salvage it somehow.
When the refs notify us on what we're gonna do, I'm guessing we'll probably have to restart the game here, but. So some setting was probably up. There's obviously a reason why he was not able to make that. And this has got to be a little bit tilting for Stephano here. You come in here, you have all these plans, all these builds mapped out. In your mind's eye, you know how you want the game to go.
What about DnS, man? He made a pylon on the expansion of Stephano. There was no hatchery. He's like, yes, it worked. Well, actually, no, it didn't.
No, exactly. Like he gets there and he's like, and of course there might be that adrenaline rush where you get there and you're like, what is he doing? I don't see anything. You know what I mean? Is he hiding a hatchery somewhere in the middle of the map? I don't know.
Saving for a rainy day.
Yeah. But yeah, that's got to be frustrating. You have a direction that you're going to try to bring this game to overcome your opponent, and then there's this hiccup right when the series starts. And you know, this isn't, I wouldn't say common, but it does happen. And you know, you got to make sure that doesn't affect your mindset because we have 6 days of insanity coming up. I mean, this is the most insane feat, really, you can accomplish is to win a tournament like this where everybody's here. You have games all day, back to back, constantly, and you have to have that kind of stamina and that much of a variety in your play. You have to be that tenacious to actually get deep into the Intel Extreme Masters. And so off to a bumpy start here in game 1.
Yeah, and the very instructional ticker down there showing us the stats here of these two players in the matchup. So we mentioned the head-to-head being 7-2 in DNS's favor, but in Protoss versus Zerg in particular, 30-4 DNS doing really well post 4.0 patch, whereas Stephano is only 9-4, so not nearly as impressive. But like the next thing that's going to be written here is important to mention as well. They both train at the Foreigner House in Korea.
That's right.
Which is basically the highest level. It's the hyperbolic time chamber is, I think, what they call it, right?
Yeah,
DBZ.
Yeah,
so
it's basically that and the Jin Air Green Wings training together, and those are the two best ecosystems to make top-tier pro gamers. You know, I will say, despite DNS on the rise, Stephano has this X factor that you basically don't see in almost any other pro gamer. He has the confidence. He's got the charisma. You know, people love watching him play. They love seeing him in interviews when he wins. He loves the crowd. He gets excited to perform. I don't feel like he necessarily feels the same kind of pressure. It's almost like he just owns it. He just comes in here and he owns the game. He owns the fame.
And also for a long time, I think he was just ahead of people with certain things. Like the way he grouped his lavas while he was producing units was very unique, and he was a pioneer in using that. That really helped him do well in the past.
So while we have a little bit more downtime here to get things adjusted, we're going to throw it back over to the desk with Kalaris and see what's going on there. Guys, take it away.
All right, thank you very much, guys. Of course, we do have other games going on, and in fact, laptop number 1 right now with Rotterdam is getting pretty heated up between Probe and Kerr, correct?
It's lit. It's lit, James. Let's go ahead and jump into my game real quick. I love some PvP in the morning, especially when it includes Phoenixes. So you guys can see it a little bit behind me, but it would be nice if my big upper body, which is not full of muscle, would not be blocking it. And you guys just missed the final moment of the ending as Krr has taken game number 1. Now what I can do is maybe just rewind it for a split second. If,
let's try that.
Anybody is interested. It was a rather slow game in the beginning, a very standard macro-oriented opening. But then one player played Phoenix, and Phoenixes are very good, so people are annoyed in the fact that they lose a bunch of probes. And at one point, Chris said, like, you know what, I have enough of it. No blink, by the way. We're going to look at this army, and you know what I can also do, James? Make a circle.
Oh!
This army said, we've had enough of losing probes. So you can see Krr make a push here on the third base of Probe. Probe brings in the Phoenixes, he gets the Prism, but the Guardian Shield keeps the Prism alive forever. Eventually he decides to live the Immortals, but the Zealots, the Archons, they all just did a little too much damage. So this means that our Lithuanian Protoss takes a 1-0 lead over the perhaps more well-known Australian Protoss that is Probe.
Yeah, impressive stuff by Kerr. Obviously, he's been around for ages, as you kind of previously mentioned. I think even back to the StarCraft 1 days. Thank you very much, Roddy, for that update. And Artosis, what's going on in your game? I think you have Soul versus Bly, correct?
That's right. We're still in game number 1, so we can go ahead and jump into that on Black-Pink. You know, Bly opened up with a little bit of Roach pressure, but didn't do too much. You know, Soul went into pretty quick Cloak Banshees. He's denied the 4th. Look, he's trying to deny the 4th base here once again. But Bly, it's kind of interesting. He's using like an older style here. He's rushing Carapace upgrades and getting up to Hive. So he's just kind of going like 3 base econ for the most part, Roaches, into an Ultra Rush. And this is something that we saw like way back when the Ravager was first introduced. So I'm kind of surprised at the style, but so far it's a pretty good and close game, but it feels like Soul has a bit of an edge here.
Right, yeah, a bit more of a funky style coming out from Bly. Who would have thought that that would have been a sentence constructed throughout the history of StarCraft, as those Marines do push on, and that's not too bad a fungal itself.
Would you say it was beautiful, James?
I think Dan would say that. But aside from that, Kerr going up 1 game against Probe, that's an impressive result to start for him.
No, this is the things that I love, James. This is what I love about this tournament. Normally, we don't even get to cast a guy like Krr. You know, we know that he's good, but we just don't get to cast him anymore because, you know, we rush through the open bracket on the first day of a big tournament. We've got too many players. We can't actually give him the love and credit they deserve. But this is a 6.6, 6.7k Protoss on the European server. those guys are really legit, James, because I try really hard and I'm nowhere near that level. So for me, it's really fun to just watch him play a game against somebody we do see a little bit more, and Probe, and you can see that he's already holding his own, so I'll keep a close eye on it.
Absolutely. I mean, Kerr is somebody who I remember way back in the day being on a team called Blast. Like, that was maybe, what, 2013, 2014 era?
As you said, he's a really old school player. I used to practice in StarCraft 1 with Kerr all the time.
Right.
Like, he was a very strong Protoss player way back as far as like 2005.
Right, yeah. It's very, very long time ago indeed, because we're all getting old now, gentlemen.
Tell me. Keep waking up at 4 a.m. every time I travel. It's like, I used to not have this. I used to just stay awake all night and I'd be fine. I'd be ready to get some StarCraft. These days, or I'm just so excited. That could be it as well.
Yeah.
By the way, it looks like Soul might be trying to finish off Bly right now. A huge drop in the main. I can kind of move so you guys can see that. He actually picked up all of his siege tanks and marines, and the Ultra's just not quite ready here for Bly, so some good play coming out of Soul.
What is it with Artosis and Polish Starens? Last year we had the Artosis and Ziggy show, and now it's already praising Soul this much? Dan?
All he needs to do is go mech fully for you.
He's playing well. I don't know. I'm liking it. I'm waiting for the Ziggy group, though. That's really that's my guy.
Yeah, we'll just have you here the whole time, only following Ziggy. That'd be great. Pig, what game will you be jumping into? I know I can see that your lobby was up and good to go.
It's just started. It's TY versus Lilikanen, so they just had a little bit of delay on the start. So they've just started map number 1. No action yet, but a Terran versus Terran, of course. Lilikanen, famous for his creative mech styles, so no doubt going to be trying to bring out some weird builds. TY, though, he invented all the TVT builds, so it's going to be tough.
You know, Lilikanen is the type of player, though, that even though he's known for his long, drawn-out games, if he goes up against somebody that he thinks is way better than him, he likes to cheese the heck out of them. He's crazy as well. Like, he is obviously a slow mech player in some ways, and if he feels like he's an even level or he's even the favorite, he likes to take his time, but if he goes up against somebody that's way better than him, maybe game 1 he tries a regular style, and game 2 he's going to build 4 barracks in your main.
Just keeping you guys updated at home, we just need a few more moments before we actually get back into that Stephano game, but that's why this tournament is phenomenal, because we have the opportunity to be able to check out all of these games as they continue on, and we've got plenty more of it to come. So I don't think there's been any more movements in your games, guys.
My game number 2 is just on the way. If you guys really want to talk a little bit about PvP, I don't mind.
Oh, like, what a surprise.
You know, like if I have to do it.
You?
Yeah, you know, if I have to talk about PvP, let's go ahead and
I wonder what units you make in that matchup, Roddy.
Phoenix, like in every matchup.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We can jump into my game real quick, because it is actually about to get a little bit interesting, and if we're still waiting for Stephano DnS, I think we may as well, right?
Yeah, let's head over to Laptop 1 then to kind of keep things on rolling here.
Because things are getting a little cheeky. We've got a Stargate over here, and we already saw this Oracle go, woo, that direction. Sorry, I just really want
You're loving it.
Yeah. But there's no shield battery yet in the main base of Probe, and the Dark Shrine gets scouted. Now he used the recall?
He's walled out as well,
He walled himself out. Wow, what a disastrous opening here for Probe. He walled himself out. He let the Pylon finish against the Adepts, had no shield battery, ended up losing a bunch of probes. And I actually think in a weird way he could even be in trouble of losing the Nexus. Now I know that Adepts are not going to kill the Nexus, but if Krur decides to warp in a couple of Stalkers, I think it's safe to say, James, that this is a disastrous opening, because this little guy, he's got energy. And he also has a really cool head. No.
No. Don't even start.
Sorry. No, but 2 oracles is obviously the magic number, right? That's when you start one-shotting all these probes. And I think he can just fly in, even if he ends up losing an oracle. I wouldn't mind sometimes losing 1 oracle. In this phase in the game, if you can take out 4 or 5 probes, I actually think that's worth it, because he's getting his own expand on the other side of the map. I mean, this game, obviously, James, is going to go on for quite some time. But Krr is in a really good position.
Look, with great power comes great responsibility, gentlemen. We all have these drawing tools available to us, and we can be very mature about them.
Oh, a little hat has never hurt anybody.
A little hat has indeed never hurt anyone. But thank you very much, guys, for all the updates from our games, as we are ready to head over back to Stephano going up against DnS.
We're back, and this is not a drill. We are actually going to start our first game, Stephano versus DnS. If you're just now joining us, there was a bit of a hiccup. Some settings were not correct. I believe on Stephano's end, he was not able to make his
start
first
a hatchery or anything.
Making buildings is pretty important in StarCraft. So we're going to be hopping into game number 1, and we'll see how this goes from here.
We're getting double the tasteless intros for that
That's
one
right.
map.
That's right. But there's only so many tasteless
Wow.
intros. That's what people don't know. They actually run out. There's a magic number.
Yeah? What is it?
We'll find out if there's any more delays. All right. In the upper right, in the blue, he is Stephano. And his opponent in the bottom left, in the red, he is DnS.
Looking to perhaps do the same pylon block we saw in the previous game here. He's already got a probe almost there across the map. DnS, I would say, is a pretty good player in the matchup here, which, as of late, I feel like Protosses really have come with a good way to deal with Zergs, you know, going for a good amount of Immortals, going for Archons, High Templars with Storm and all that, and then kind of perfecting that transition into air. The thing is, he's very good at it, but not necessarily on a level where, like, you could say that, you know, he's almost untouchable. Whereas, like, somebody like Showtime, you look at him play and you're like, okay, well, basically to beat this guy with Zerg, you're gonna have to be on your A game. You're gonna have to be a god. Nothing short of that will work. So DnS, I would say, is beatable, but I feel like if he puts all his practice into effect here and plays really well, plays solid, especially like defensively, I think he's gonna be in a good spot to win this series.
So we saw the probe there blocking the hatchery from being made. At the natural expansion, I think in general, Protoss versus Zerg, a good Protoss is able to control and navigate the Zerg. A Zerg, you know, a race is like, if you leave it untouched, it will get out of hand. So you have to be constantly pressuring, forcing the Zerg to respect where the Protoss is in the game. And we saw that just back there, but what you were saying earlier with, you know, getting the right set of ground units, applying a certain amount of pressure, potentially going into air. Yeah. These things are all integral if you're going to take on a player who's a top tier Zerg, especially somebody like Stephano, who's actually very difficult to navigate.
Stephano, I was mentioning earlier before we went back to the desk that in the past what has brought him success is that he was just kind of ahead of the curve. First, by grouping his larva with his army before they were even out, so that allowed him that as soon as his units were out to actually be active with them on the map very effectively. And many things like that, which many other Zergs took and started using from him. He was really the first guy that did that, as far as I know. Later on, a lot of players learned to do that, you know, as well as him, if not better. So he had to find something else. And I would say that his engagements is, I think, what made him so successful, even after that. Even after his technical retirement, after which he kept on playing a lot. He's definitely one of those more, you know, fast retired players in a way where he's like been playing the whole time, but his engagements for a long time. And now everybody's kind of caught up on that. Everybody's gotten really good at engagements, but he's still sometimes able to make those work. The one game that he won against Zest in Pyeongchang, remember, that was off of a great engagement in the middle of the map where he caught Zest armies off guard and then counter-attacked. Also composition-wise, he was going for the right thing.
That's right. We have Phoenixes now being made out of the Stargate. The Stargate's pretty standard as far as this matchup goes. You're able to come in there, take out workers, assuming you get an Oracle, for instance. And then the Phoenix can be used to try to bully back some of these overlords here on the map. But overall, I would say DnS looking pretty solid. There's no way to really declare how exactly this game's going to go. Although I do find it kind of cool that he actually went Phoenix before Oracle in this case to try to get rid of overlords. A lot of times we see it the other way around.
Yeah, I think if you can get that overlord out of there, then it takes a lot of the scouting away from Zerg, especially because most Zergs like Stephano, they don't really want to go for Pneumatized Carapace, so then they won't have an overlord across the map being able to scout. So you have to keep wondering, is there something very aggressive coming or not?
Yeah, I was about to say that it can telegraph that you're trying to hide something. The fact that you want to get rid of the overlord, a good player might look at that and say, okay, well, why?
But all alike, you can play to that image and then play greedy and take more.
I mean, this is what happens with a game that is built on incomplete information. You can certainly perform certain actions that would make a smart player think, okay, you're trying to pull this, and in fact never go there. Maybe Stephano over-defends for an attack that's not coming.
Exactly, and DnS is the one that's going to have the scouting initiative as well, having these air units across the map now with the Phoenix and the Oracle. He's going to have to get out of there with the Oracle. He took all of the shield damage from some Queens, but he's going for the standard, you know, additional many gateways with charge and then into potential high temp loss. Usually for Archons, but sometimes going into Storms pretty early as well. And then you'll always see a third base starting here from Protoss as well. Like nobody ever does something like an 8-gate all-in anymore.
Yeah, that's a passe at this point in time in the game. The Warp Prism coming out as well, and assuming that he does morph the Templars into Archons, that's really where you could start to juggle the Archons in and out. It's kind of insane.
Oh, you juggle them, do you?
That's what I juggle them. When I'm playing there, it's juggling for sure. No, I mean, if you bring these Archons out, you can eke out so much extra damage, and since the Archons are almost entirely made up of shields, as long as they don't die, they're going to regen everything. And this was something that for a while in StarCraft was actually pretty vexing for Zergs to try to deal with, because it was just so it was so annoying, it was so frustrating when it would come at you. And we're going to see DnS begin to move out here now.
For a long time, Zergs needed to get something like 10 roaches to deal with these Archons, but nowadays they are trying different stuff, like going quicker for Hydralisks, which is what we're seeing here from Stephano. So for now, he's only going to mostly rely on Zerglings and Queens in the first place to try and hold on against this. But yeah, it's not just the 2 Archons Saras. Like it's very popular to actually warp in a lot of charge loss here to try and actually deal some big damage.
Okay, that's actually pretty big that those 2 Queens were already taken out, basically doing no extra damage. Now, DnS has wedged his army in between the second base and the third. I don't see very much to defend here.
Hey, the drones are trapped here. How are they supposed to leave? The Archon will start on sniping them. Stephano does make it out of there with most of the drones, but defending against this army is going to be tough.
So some of those Banelings did connect with those Zealots, which is exactly what they need to do. Stephano's going to be able to hold this expansion. We don't have another Warpman coming in just yet. The Phoenix now picking up one of the remaining Hydralisks. DnS's army is thinning out, but if Stephano can stay solid here, he might actually be able to save this expansion in a situation I actually thought he was most certainly going to lose a little bit more. Clutch play by Stephano. Also, I felt like DnS missed, or was at least a little bit late with the Warpman, maybe concerned about trying to keep the Archons alive in that juggling act while trying to keep the Warp Prism mobile.
It's enough damage, though, I would say, though, from DnS, like killing as many drones as he did. Now he's on 61 walkers against 45. And usually, if you're on the same base count or around as the Zerg player, you're doing something right. Now DnS is on 3 bases against Stephano. He got the 4th hatchery but hasn't saturated it yet. I would say DnS is in a pretty good spot, especially if he doesn't get over-aggressive from there. If he takes his time, gets his upgrades, goes into Storm, and then later on maybe does some sort of follow-up attack. I feel like DnS has done enough damage here as he needed to.
Yeah, it should be noted as well, as this game progresses, the other expansions Stephano can take are pretty far out. So that may be an area that DnS wants to steer this game into. Is just staying three bases or 4 bases for DnS, 2 Stephanos 4, and just watch for the 5th base. A lot of games can just end with you repeatedly coming out and smashing a base over and over, and eventually the Zerg dries up.
I thought I heard a weird sound effect. He actually recalled that Prism.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, it was up there. I think DnS maybe thought there was Hydralisks at the top position here. Yeah, on the left side. So he thought he might be trapped. So he's like, you know what? Let me just play it safe. Recall that, make sure I keep these units alive. So it's going to work out pretty well for him.
Okay, this is actually a pretty big catch here to take out this Immortal. Unlike almost every other unit from Protoss, for instance, coming out of the gateway, you can warp in units in mass, but Immortals increment out 1 by 1 unless you're getting additional robos, but then you're also taking the game in a pretty severe direction. Now, hold up. We have a big attack coming up here now. Some of the Banelings connecting on those Zealots, but overall, a pretty good arc here. Stephano now retreating. Stephano managed to match the workers of DnS, but he certainly doesn't have an army that seems to be able to match what DnS has, and it looks like this expansion will fall.
Yeah, they might just be too much here for DnS, completely catching Stephano off guard, using the left side of the map to move stealthily across the map, undetected, jumping on top of Stephano's space with too much.
You could see, actually, that DnS is being careful to not overcommit. Now, he's identified that these Banelings are morphing, so he can actually come in here and try to take these out before they finish completion.
Look at all these Archons. Juggle this.
Yeah, I know. I think there's no way at this point in time that Stephano can stop this push coming out here from DnS. Another big warp in. And if Stephano can't hold this position, he will have to give this game up and go on into game number 2. There it is. GG. Stephano taps out. And DnS is just that much closer to getting out of this series as the victor.
He played kind of like you would expect him to. I think it was more Stephano that just wasn't ready as much as he should have been. I mentioned it, the Zergs for a long time. They were going into something like 10 roaches to try and hold on against these Archon drops. But Stephano tried to go for Ling and Hydras and paid the price for it. He had them just a little too late.
I'm really looking forward to game 2. But before we go to that, let's throw it back to the desk with Caleres and the boys and see what's happening in these other games here at the Intel Extreme Masters.
That's right, thank you very much. Many games going on at the moment. Welcome back to the analysis desk as we can check in. Dan, I think you're currently in game number 2 between Soul and Bly, correct?
That's right. Bly definitely fighting back pretty strongly in this game. He opened it up, actually, with a 2-base Nidus Roach Queen attack, and he cut him down to like 5 SCVs.
What?
So the fact that Soul is still in this game is, I mean, it speaks a lot to his tenacity, right? But Bly has stayed pretty low on drones overall. He's been rushing up into Ultralisk tech again off the Roaches and a couple Infestors. But Soul just keeps on running around and just getting little bits of damage done. And somehow he's fighting back in. Look at this. Like, he just killed 12 drones here. He's up here trying to get a drop on, but these Ultralisk upgrades are serious right now. He's already got chitinous plating. He's working on +3 carapace. So, you know, the Ghost transition is coming, but I don't know if he's going to be able to win the longer game here.
All right, well, thank you very much for that update. And at the same time, laptop number 3, Pig, we do have Lillikinen going up against TY, correct?
Absolutely, it's game number 2. TY did take game number 1, and right now we are seeing a proxy Liberator play from Lillikinen, getting a little bit of damage done, but TY staying very calm. That Liberator does go down. Now, one more Liberator is about to pop out, but TY, he actually played a very safe game 1, staying 1 base for a while, went for a big Cyclone attack, took out Lillikinen. This time around, he's expanded quicker, but look how safe he is. Tank and a bunker at the front. These Hellions were meant to distract, but they really haven't achieved that goal. And every time these Liberators siege up, TY is so quick on pulling away his workers. So what would have been a devastating attack that Lillikinen was hoping for hasn't really got him any edges just yet. So TY looking confident in this series.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, as we are ready to head back into game number 2 here between Stephano and DnS.
So, DnS taking out Stephano in a pretty convincing game in game number 1. I'm curious what exactly Stephano is going to have to do adjustment-wise to start a comeback here in our second match.
And you know, like, we talked about how the overload being taken out can disguise an attack like this. Seeing the amount of gateways can really be a huge tell of how many units are going to be coming your way. And I think Stephano not seeing this coming is also what caused him to misreact to it and mistime it slightly.
DnS looking to move on here, is getting ready here for game number 2. Stephano, he's a very experienced player. I'm sure he should be able to clutch this, and I think we're going to see a more convincing game from him coming around now. In the bottom right, in the blue, he is Stephano! And his opponent here in the upper left, winning game number 1. He is DnS.
Neither player a stranger to the Intel Extreme Masters. They were just in Pyeongchang. Both of them were. And they got a pretty tough draw, to be honest. Stephano was up against Zest, and DnS was up against SOS, so they drew the 2 Koreans in their first match.
2 of the best Protosses of all time.
Probably hoping that in the next tournament they wouldn't draw a Korean again. And guess what? They drew each other instead.
I know, it's crazy. Yeah, not a lot of downtime between the Pyeongchang IEM and the one we have now in Katowice. But I think it's still enough time for small improvements to be made. That's really what Starcraft is. It's like, if you're a Starcraft player, you're in this constant journey of trying to improve and adjust in a game that can change so rapidly. This is sort of the crazy thing about esports, is that any point in time you can get on your PC, queue up a game, and boom, you're matched with somebody of your skill level somewhere in the world. And we do see the metas shift and change as time passes, and we see DnS bringing especially a very solid opening in game 1. But of course, there's a reason why we make them play more than one game. We don't do it single elimination games because players have an opportunity to try to get a better read on their opponent, pick up on more strategies and techniques, and try to make adjustments. And a lot of times, if you have 2 players, let's say one player who maybe is not as good as the other one can win 1 or 2 games. If you make them play 100 games, the better player will end up winning way more as they make the proper adjustments to their opponent.
It's definitely worrying, though, the way Stephano lost that, because it's not like DnS did something like absolutely crazy or out of the ordinary. That was the standard build that we've been seeing a lot out of Protosses, where you get Archons, Charge Loss, and then you go for that first initial attack while taking your third base and then going to Storm. DnS, that pylon placement tells me he wants to add something there. So he's going to make his target all the way back.
Yeah.
And he made a Stalker to deny the Overlord, so that target should not be getting spotted. And now Stephano again, and this time from the very start of this map, he's going to have to guess what DnS is up to, which you never want to be doing in StarCraft. You want to know what your opponent's doing, so then you can counter it properly.
Exactly. I mean, this is why if you have a map hack at StarCraft, it's so insanely powerful and unfair, because if you just see what they're doing, then, of course, you can try to counter it directly. But this game, DnS coming in here and actually really utilizing what he learned in Game 1, saying, lights out for you, Stephano. The map is going to be a dark and scary place, and you're not going to know what I'm up to. Now, when we saw him do that in Game 1, he did set up a timing attack. Is that going to be too predictable to do in Game 2? Because just because you deny the scout early on, that doesn't mean that a timing attack is necessarily more surprising, especially if you already did it one time before.
But there is always that mind game of, I did it one time, he's never going to think I'm going to do it twice. And then all like for Stephano is like, he did it once, really? Is he going to do it twice? So both players kind of have to take the risk. Obviously, they will both be attempting to do a little bit more scouting, whereas the initiative is definitely in DNS's core. Unless Stephano wants to do something crazy, like make a lot of units to make sure he's ready defensively and then maybe go for an all-in as a counter-attack. But it's just too risky, because if he gets it wrong, he's lost the game basically 100% of the time. So I think DnS, he's the one that's going to be basically setting up the tempo at this stage in the game with the whatever attack that he goes into, and as both players look to build up their economy more.
Okay, first Oracle comes in, only gets one drone, and losing nearly all of its hit points. So DnS is going to have to be careful if he tries to come in there with that Oracle again. You have to remember that the Oracle is not just used to try to snipe workers early on. It has a lot of utility in the late game for tagging the army, and then you can track movements and try to get a better engage. I'm sorry, we didn't have a second Oracle made, right? I didn't see one. It's just that one that's out there on the map. Yep.
Oh, and do you see that DnS goes for glaives here?
Yeah,
so
look at that.
Last game he went for charge. Maybe he's hoping that Stephano goes for roaches here, which Stephano is not. But either way, glaives can be very good. You can overwhelm with just too many adepts. If you get even, say, like, let's say 3 to 4 adepts in 1 minute line, and there is no units nearby to actually fight them, and I'm not talking about Queen, like just proper attacking units, these guys are going to kill an incredible amount of drones instantly, and then Protoss starts pulling ahead on walkers, and we saw what happened last game. Like, it's just almost too easy to win from there if you're able to do that kind of damage. So DnS is going to rely on that. He starts a robo there, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be seeing these adepts head across the map right now against a Stephano who's... I don't know if he's going to be ready here for this. And like I said, these adepts, they can shade from one base to another so fast that for Stephano to have the mobility to deal with this is going to be very hard. You would need Banelings, I think.
I think you're correct. It's funny, when the Adept was first introduced in StarCraft 2, everybody had a hard time dealing with it because we never had a unit that would move like this, being able to shade in and out.
But it was different as well, right? It was a little bit stronger than it is now. Right? I remember you having a few laughs during some games.
For sure. But also just trying to keep track of the movements. There are a lot of games where it just out-position stuff. So we see now the Adepts going here into the main. And these drones now being pulled, they're looping around, trying to rotate towards maybe the ramp, which would be a safer location. Additional Adepts come in, Banelings connect, and the remaining Lings should be able to clean that up. But right now, Stephano really taking a lot of damage. This could snowball if DnS can keep this up.
Yeah, DnS being all over the place right now with these Adepts. He forced a huge drone transfer into the natural. Now he's going to camp a little bit in the main. Stephano's economy here from there, like, it takes such a big hit. Not only does he lose drones, but he loses mining time as well.
Yeah,
and in the meantime, DnS, what is he doing? Making more walkers of his own, transitioning, charge 3 more gates, Robo Bay for Colossus, because he knows that he's going to be facing Hydralisks. And he recalls, he saves everything.
Yeah, this is beautiful.
Wow.
And I mean, what does Protoss really lose in a maneuver like that? Nothing. You know, the amount of workers that were killed, but also the amount that were just denied mining time. You know, sometimes you can look at a game and say, well, he didn't lose that many workers, he's okay.
Yeah.
If the drones aren't mining, you're losing money anyways. And the fact that there was nothing there to interrupt DnS in that whole process means Stephano is going to get further and further behind if he's not able to engineer some kind of a comeback.
Stephano might just hope that DnS does a follow-up attack and then try and crush him in the middle of the map and counter-attack. I think that's what he did against Zest, and I think that was on this map as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if he took that
route here again. He's on 61 drones right now. We'll see if he chooses to make units or drones, but right now it's only units for Stephano. Yeah, so I really feel like he's had enough. I feel like he fell far behind enough, and he's only going to be making units, try and catch DnS. Like if DnS gets over aggressive, like sometimes, you know, you're doing so well that you think that you can do almost anything. That would be a very bad idea. Like against a Stephano that's only making units right now, DnS should just sit at home, get a massive army, and then win the fight easily when he finally chooses to fight. But if he moves out too early, which in the previous game I almost felt like, you know, if he hadn't been doing so well, it would have been the case, Stephano is going to want to look to try and punish him. And now Stephano actually, he transitions. He starts more drones. And he wants to go into, I think, more Hydralisks and maybe potentially into Lurkers because the attack's not coming. Like, you have to transition eventually.
Yeah, that's right. You can't stay in that tech position forever. You know, DnS taking that 4th base in the upper left and continuing to just suck up more resources and basically just grow and get bigger. I think you're right. This is probably the correct play. Now, Stephano taking this gold base right here is very important because this forces DnS to make a decision, because once that gold base finishes and Stephano starts to mine from it, the amount of economic momentum he's going to have going into the rest of this game is something that, well, DnS will have to either play around or try to deny immediately. Yeah. So let's see if he does decide to push out. Supplies right now, 143 to 132. They are dead even on workers, both at 74. But that hatchery, again, very close to finishing. Will DnS react and try to punish him for expanding there?
I think like there is no rush, right? Like it's not finished just yet. Like, and DnS is in such a good position supply-wise that all he has to do almost is just kind of max out, get close to maxing out, and then go for the fight. And I think he's going to be able to do very well in the actual fight, despite the amount of banelings there. As long as he micros properly, lands a couple of good force fields, he should be all right. But his army can die very quickly as well if he messes up.
Yeah, whenever you have this many banelings, you have to watch the first few seconds in the engagement. That's where you see, okay, how was the damage distributed, and what does Protoss have left over?
Yeah, the vision here is almost the most important thing, right? Because if DnS moves across the map and then banelings come in from behind, it's so hard for him to land a 360 set of force fields around his army. So that's why we've seen him send a lot of hallucinated phoenixes across the map, always trying to scout as much as he can. Kept the Oracle alive very nicely. Usually, when you're a Protoss player and you go up to 200 supply and you're facing a Zerg on layer tech, you should never be losing the fight, I feel like.
Right, I agree.
But it's about winning it hard enough as well that you can actually counterattack and finish the Zerg, because their reproduction is very fast. Despite not having warp gates, they have a lot of lavas and their units finish very quickly as well.
I'm sorry, DnS has seen the gold base, right? I'm not... Okay, yeah. So he has confirmation. I'm just checking, because even when he moved out with his army, he didn't seem to go around that area.
He tags the lair, and he knows what I just mentioned, where if you face a Zerg on lair tech, all you have to do is max out, and then you're doing really well for yourself usually. So now he starts Storm. That's actually a very late Storm. He was playing a little bit scared almost this whole time, where Stephano goes for Corruptors. Corruptors, they can do well against Colossi, but it's like I said, once Protoss maxes out, it's just that much harder to make them work, because then you're fighting against Stalkers, High Templars will storm on top of these guys. So Stephano, it almost feels like he should be attacking right now, but attacking across the map off creep into a Protoss with cannons, with shield batteries, is going to be very hard all the time.
Yeah, this layer tech, like staying on this for a long time, I think started becoming trendy in Heart of the Swarm, but it's always been somewhat viable as a way to have, you know, pack a lot more punch for a certain period of time in the game. But when he did tag that was brilliant, and Stephano's going to have to try to pull this game into a longer one. Warp Prism is now taken out. Stephano does, by the way, continue to grow here on the map. We have almost half of the map actually covered in creep, and we're still waiting for DnS to actually try to push out, but I think staying back for a little bit was the wise decision.
Yeah.
And try to get a more sophisticated army and tech set up, more upgrades, so that you can actually manage a Zerg in the late game.
That's such a scary, I mean, so many Archons here. Stars +3 attack upgrade and fleet beacon. Mothership definitely popular, an addition here to make to your army.
And you know,
this attack that's the scary one. He has so many storms here. I think he has at least 5 or 6 storms.
Well, not to mention the angle here with this ramp on the high ground. Whoa, that was sick. Denying any attempt from the Zerg to get in there, but having that high ground and being able to poke from there, especially with the Colossi range, and at the same time sending these Zealots up here to this expansion, this is how you can slowly and steadily dismantle a Zerg.
Yeah, nice spread here on the Archons, making sure those banings don't connect too bad. Actually, there is not any Stalkers here to help this.
Yeah, he only has Archons, and if you notice, he actually made sure the Corruptors went over the army, so they couldn't really be stormed either without, DnS storming some of himself, and Stephano's handling this very well.
Yeah, so far, good engagement here out of him. He did lose 15 drones, though, in the meantime. DnS trying to get the trades that he can get here with that fight. Lands some more storm, but he lost all of his Colossi, all of his High Templars. Stephano, if he wants to make something happen, I think he has to be right now. He needs to make units, keep on attacking. I mean, obviously, he could go into Broodlords slowly. He does have a lot of gas, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting because even though we were talking about that high ground ramp area, and it was, it's always desirable for the Protoss to try to come out from an angle like that. If you notice, Stephano just stayed back. He had a static defense there and a nice arc where his army could come around. If DnS overextended, I think DnS did overextend. He didn't control the Archons correctly to try to gun down the Corruptors when they were actually dealing all the damage to the Colossi. And once all those Colossi were picked off, it was a much easy closing fight there for Stephano to take that. But so far, we don't see Stephano going for any quick counterattack. He is just teching up to Broodlords, which means we might end up getting into a slower game. Once the Zerg has those Broodlords, obviously your opponent has to respect them because they're such a scary unit, but at the same time, we'll see games where the player plays around the Broodlords. He'll attack wherever the Broodlords aren't, and if the Zerg tries to push, then we see more counterattacks like we're seeing with these
what else ignites respect? Tasteless Void Race. And right now, DnS has made a whole bunch of them. He's getting Kairos as well. He's getting the right army here to try and deal with this. I mentioned Stephano's engagements before. I really feel like that's what kind of saved him as well around that gold base, is how well he took the engagements. A lot of the time here, you're going to see a Protoss just completely destroy the Zerg army, and then from there, finish the Zerg player, but not Stephano. He hangs in there, finds himself on a lot of bases, and it's going to be a longer game by the look of things, which between these two players, I almost shouldn't be surprised because they are known for being very good at longer games, both of these guys.
That's right. So we have 5 carriers coming out at a time, which is a pretty insane amount for a DnS to be producing here. And we're going to what we would call Supreme Late Game, where we have all the tech set up, everything's getting upgraded, and the map is essentially being cut in half. And whenever we get in situations like this, it's important to note what expansions are remaining on the map, because a lot of times those become the final points of contention as we get to the end. As all the resource patches begin to dry up, and each player is forced to actually expand closer to their opponent.
And who wants this to happen more than the other right now is Stephano, because he was one of the first guys to really say, I'm going to split the map, make you lose more resources than I'm losing, and just beat you after mining out the map in a very, very long game. And that's how he breaks his opponents. That's what he did for a very long time, mostly off the back of Swarm Host. So despite the Swarm Host being very heavily changed, you can't do that nearly as much anymore right now. Stephano feels very comfortable building up a lot of static defense. He went into Neural Parasite. He's making a ton of Infestors. His plan is simple. Take this game the long way. Mine out the map. Keep on dealing with DNS's army with the spells that he has on his Infestors, Fungal, Infested Terran. And from there, just break him, not just in this game, but then mentally before a potential map number 3 if he was to win this one.
That's right. And each time when you get into a game that's this late, you really get to see how good of a StarCraft player you are, because every game is different. What units were lost, when did each player expand to these different locations. And that means that you have to have very good end-game instinct here.
Yeah.
And 1 or 2 mistakes, and you can lose everything, especially when you get this many units, this powered up all together. So it should also be noted, it becomes a bit of a chess game on the map. There's 2 core armies, the mothership with the carriers, and of course the Broodlords for the Zerg and whatever's defending it that's underneath, like Infestors in this case, for instance.
Stephano's Sturtling style is definitely, I would say, masterful. Like at times he's made Firecake look like an all-in player.
Yeah,
Firecake was a pretty turtly player himself at times with the Swarm Host.
It's pretty cool to see what Stephano's doing now at the bottom of the map. He has this push, this anti-air push coming here. And he's, I believe, trying to encroach on the territory at the very, very bottom left. And I think he might be able to, if he's fast enough, come in here, take this out, and then leave. And we're seeing that now. These Lings are kind of come in here. The sluggish army of Protoss is trying to move southbound here, but I don't know that he's going to be able to get there. And you can see in the bottom left, DnS has lost that location. Stephano, using those expendable Lings, actually comes down there and takes that out. And the upper right portion of the map is still open for the taking, and it seems like it should be easy for Stephano to take that if he wants.
But that siege is so scary as well. Like, what is DnS supposed to do? Fight against all of these spores? Zerg is the one race where the static defense is actually not static at all.
Yeah.
It's mobile.
Yeah, it is.
And now he's using it as part of his army, spamming some infested terrain in advance. Stephano really wants to get in there. I thought he was going to be playing a little bit more passive, but he actually wants to push. DnS will lose patience and kind of engage into this.
Yeah, and we see this push slowly coming across the map. Yes, be careful. Those Broodlords bunch up. A few Psionic Storms completely eliminate that. We have Infested Terrans now pushing out as well. And I think if Stephano can crack this position, DnS is going to be zoned out of a healthy late game. And unless DnS can stop this right now, that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, Stephano needs to fungal a little bit more here, these interceptors, so that they can keep on dying, and they're going to be very hard to replace. Like, DnS should be spending his bank. Look at his bank! His bank just vanished!
Yeah.
Because he keeps on losing interceptors against infested Terran, fungal, and spores. This is so smart by Stephano. He has so much economy now in comparison. That was the healthiest base of DnS, which, by the way, he hasn't retaken elsewhere. He's going to run out of minerals soon, and it's not like he's going to win a big fight anytime soon.
Yeah, it almost seemed like, despite how good DnS is in, like, mid-game, for instance, he doesn't have a very clear direction he's bringing the game if it gets too late, right? He just has a big army, where Stephano clearly had a plan. I mean, if you just look at the creep spread, guys, in the mini-map at the bottom left, like, the whole map is covered.
Yeah.
Stephano just has, he can go anywhere, he can pick any fight he wants. I know the upper right bases aren't taken, but it's clearly Stephano's territory. He has vision of it. And this is going to be tough, because if DnS is, his income is slowing down to a drag and will eventually be a halt. And with carriers, you know, one feature of them is that you have to keep making those interceptors. So every engagement here for DnS has to be good, or we'll be going on into game number 3.
Yeah, some more fungals here going to land on top of some of these Archons here, getting the proper lockdown for the Broodlords to actually kill them. DnS is kind of losing patience. A lot of Protosses here, that they would counterattack. They would be like, okay,
sure,
your army is too strong for me to face, I'll just go around and then ignite some sort of base trade. But DnS doesn't want to do that. He's confident enough for his army to actually deal well with Stephanos, which so far hasn't really been the case, but he's building it up very nicely. He's got the +3 attack for his air units right now. He's adding on a good amount of Archons. It's all about having enough Storms as well to really help deal with those infested Terran, Infestors. And now he's starting to use the mobility of his army a little bit more, moving to the right-hand side and kind of forcing Stephano to move back there.
Yeah, DnS is slowly carved through the creep. It is now here at the upper right side of the map. I believe there's actually an attack in the bottom center. If we can get a shot of that, please. Okay, yeah. So he's now hitting these locations. Now, I was saying that DnS has to have basically perfect engages from here on out. He hasn't messed up yet, Todd. He's still kind of coming through here. I think we have a lane counterattack in the very center left, which is important to know because that expansion should be denied. Now back over to this fight here. Can DnS actually continue to break through? He's doing a lot of damage here.
Look at his interceptors. A lot of them are fungled. There was not many spores in the area, so they weren't dying here in the first place. Infested Terrans now being sniped. DnS, again, that was very costly for him. Like, he did get some good snipes on some Broodlords, but he lost, again, his most important base. So many interceptors that he's having to replace, and he doesn't have the minerals for, so he's just starting to run dry on minerals, whereas Stephano is still fairly healthy on with the bases that he's got.
Yeah, the map control that Stephano had early on
more
is paying off.
Infestors?
Wow. Well, you know, it's interesting because it's going to be the Infestors exchanging their energy for the Interceptors on the carriers, and I think that will be what eventually breaks DnS here. Also, Stephano really patient. He didn't try to engage his army in the middle of the map or anything. He stayed back and bought as much time as possible. Look, carriers don't move fast on the map.
Yeah.
I mean, if you see them coming, there is time to react. And what Stephano's trying to do in this game is run out the clock. DnS does not. I mean, look at the minerals right now. Look how slowly it's going for DnS.
Oh yeah. Like
he's practically broke.
He's broke as a joke.
Yeah, man. And because of the unit comp that DnS went for, if DnS tries to take a base, he has to then stay back and defend it with basically everything, while Stephano can gobble up the rest of the map.
The one thing that DnS has is his strong army in his own way. He finally dealt with some of the Burlords, and Stephano was like, you know what, you want to kill my Burlords? Here's what you're going to get.
Yeah.
18 more Infestors, bringing him up to a total of 35. Now they're building up on energy. They're just like you before your intro earlier. They're building up their
That's
energy.
Right. Powering
They're going to release it all at once.
He's going to try to push out now. I'm sorry, I don't see any expansion that DnS is trying to take. Is he just going to try to win this?
I think, yeah.
In a knockout blow? That's going to be tough.
He's going to throw haymakers.
I think he's, yeah. And I don't believe it's going to go well. Of course, some bad execution from Stephano can turn this game on its head.
Army supply, 157 to 153. In a straight-up fight, DnS could actually do really well. But the thing is, there is all that defense with the sports from Stephano, landing some good fungals down top of this army, taking out so much of the shields. DnS might be forced to recall in a second, but he doesn't want to. Starts on landing some storms, but fungals land on top of a lot of these interceptors. Keep in mind, he needs to keep his observers and Oracle alive, because otherwise he's not going to have detection, and Neuroparasite is going to land. Some of them are already being used.
That's right. We see the storms trying to break through this location.
He lost the observer.
Stephano, with virtually an infinite number of infestors, is able to chuck out these fungals, and this is not going well for DnS. You can see that the Broodlords are trying now to push in. Infestors, okay, he has a few more in the back with a little bit more remaining fungals. You know, as the Protoss tries to drag the army away, they do bunch up a little bit more, which means the fungals can actually happen again and again and again. And that's going to be it. GG. We're going to game number 3. Clutch endgame there by Stephano.
Great defense. This is what he's known for, but he wasn't overly defensive either. He actually went on the offense once he had a good set of spores and the first big wave of infestors that he added to his Broodlords, and I think that was really key. The game would have been very different if he had just kind of sat back and not done much and kind of waited for DnS to do something.
Yeah, patience paid off back there for Stephano. Before we go into game number 3, let's check in at the desk and see what's happening at these other games here at the Intel Extreme Masters.
That's right, thank you very much. Of course, lots of updates to give you here from our open bracket as things evolve on forward. Maru Stats and Petit Drogo were able to take their series 2-0, and we have a few more updates from our first round that we want to get through here. Artosis, you were in Seoul versus Bly. Can you talk to us about the end of game 2?
Well, it was really impressive because, you know, Seoul had won game 1, and then there was an offensive Nidus that killed all of his SVs down to about 7.
Yeah.
And he came back. Like, he just kept harassing, he kept getting drones, and it ended up like Ultra Broodlord Ravager against lots of Ghosts and Liberators.
Right.
So he ended up taking that one down. It was really impressive. And now he's here against TY. They opened with pretty mirrored builds, but, you know, just getting the expansion up, getting the factory up. But from here, it is definitely deviating. We haven't seen any real damage dealt yet, but Seoul, he's going up to the Cloaked Banshees. Of course, TY, always the safety player, getting his Raven out. So we'll see if Seoul can get some damage done here.
And then thank you very much. And of course, Pig, you did have Lilikanen versus TY. Can you talk to me about the end of that game? Because it looks actually ridiculous.
Yeah, that was kind of hilarious. You know, Lilikanen he tried to do his proxy liberator. We jumped in, and then he kind of just didn't get much damage done. Fell back, tried to play mech, and we saw basically TY just choking him out on the map. It was bio versus mech. TY kept coming in from multiple angles and just kept him contained, but Lilikanen forced it to the late game, and we saw both of them end up with like 10 Ravens apiece, and the entire screen just turned orange with anti-armor missiles. Like, the most ridiculous last battle I've ever seen. TY did come out with a bunch of bio left alive. You know, he chewed through and ended up pushing it out. But good to see anti-armor missile is the new kind of spam spell in late game TVT. Yeah. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that this tournament.
Yeah, you may as well call it a Halloween event with everything being as orange as it was. But there you go. That's how that runs down. Rotterdam, you were actually paying attention a lot to the second game that we were seeing there from Stephano. And that was pretty ridiculous itself. 35 infestors.
Yep. Since my PvP was kind of short and I couldn't join any other game, I just kind of paid attention to the mainstream game. And I must say, it's funny because I had a little chat with Stephano before the game started, and he said he felt very solid when it comes to the scouting early game, and he feels like he never gets surprised anymore. And I kind of felt that in both games he got surprised. He definitely got surprised against, you know, in game number 1 against the Archons and the Zealots. Yeah. The queens that he sent out to spread creep, those were supposed to be defensive queens. Could have been a different game. And even in game 2, I really felt that he was in a gnarly position. Or they drawing?
But
And even in game 2, I felt he was in a gnarly position. Like Todd mentioned as well, those drones were just bouncing from base to base, and he didn't lose that many at first, but if you're not mining for so long against Resonating Glaives, I was worried, but Stephano also told me that he felt incredibly comfortable in the late game. He even had a really cool story. I'm going to give you the TLDR because I know we have to go to game 3. But he basically said he was doing well against Zest on the ladder, and at one point he's like, you know what, I'm just not going to be aggressive. I want to play against his late game. So he said, I just sat back forever because I want to see what he would do. He's like, and I still crushed that Protoss army. And well, he showed it in that previous game that he's indeed solid in the late game. So excited for game 3.
Yeah, very powerful stuff. Good use of Fungal, some infested Terrans in there with those infested, those infestors. And overall, I mean, we were theorizing you could basically neural the entire army if you really wanted to with that many infestors, right, Big?
Yeah, that was just sick play for him. And he's got the Spore Crawlers up front as well. And it's that point where the Protoss player just has no space to fall back. Every time he lost an engagement, he lost a Nexus and just choked DNS out. And that's Stephano's strength. It always has been. He loved the old Swarm Host era. And turns out, you know, Broodlord Infestor, it's coming back. It's Stephano's composition. He's good at it. He's won a lot of money with that unit comp, and he's going to do it again, man.
Yeah, maybe here in 2018. Well, we have a few more minutes to kind of talk about things. Which game do we want to jump in? Rotterdam?
Yeah,
going on?
I'm following my man Krr, you know. Last year we had the Ziggy show with Artosis, but I'm kind of feeling it a little bit for Krr. I felt he played excellent in this first series against Probe, and I thought that's really cool because how often do we get to see this Lithuanian Protoss, right? And there's a lot of very strong European players that I just feel we don't see enough of. This is one of these guys. This is a 6.6, 6.7k MMR player on the European server. We don't know him that well. This time, however, he's going up against Ryong, and he's opening up with some good old Dark Templars. Now, there is a missile turret over here, but it's a little bit late. But there is a scan going down. One DT gets picked off immediately, and this DT should be able to run towards the right side, but this does mean that the missile turret will finish up. And at the same time, 7 probes died. What killed 7 probes? And mine? Must have been mine.
You're having a bit too much fun here, Rotterdam. I can hear it in you. This is...
yeah, no, I'm like, how did he lose 7 workers? But I guess we had a mine drop. I mean, I was watching at Artosis' presentation, so I didn't see the medevac head out. But yeah, I'm looking forward to see how he does against Ryong. But I think safe to say right now, rough start, because losing 7 probes, that hurts.
Yeah, these players currently through to the next round, of course, in that upper bracket. Thank you very much. Artosis, what's currently going on in your game? Because I see some more orange.
No, totally. Soul is trying to be aggressive here against TY, and just anti-armor missiles, man, they're flying around. TY is playing defensively. They're both on 3 bases. Little bit of harassment here and there. It seems like, you know, TY definitely has the edge as far as economy goes, but when does TY not have more workers than his opponent? That's the real question.
Right. All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. As we are done with our little check-in here for all the games that are currently going down, time to go to game number 3 between Stephano and DnS.
Going into this game now, we have to look back at the 2 previous games that we saw between them. DnS able to win with a timing attack, able to come in there at a precise moment, of course denying some intel along the way for Stephano. Comes in there at a very precise moment and dismantles Stephano. It was an excellent show of just control inside the game. But in game 2, Stephano pulled the game into a long drag and showed that he is the master of endgame ZVP. So does DnS try to end this one fast, or does Stephano have another trick up his sleeve? Because I will say it seems like the longer the game goes on, the more in control of the matchup Stephano is.
I think, DnS just can't afford to play scared, and that's what happened in the previous game.
In the upper left, in the blue, he is Stephano! His opponent on the opposite side of the map, in the bottom right, in the red, he is DnS!
With the start that DnS had in the second map, I think if he just take to High Templars and Storm instead of just kind of massing Archons, made a bunch of Immortals, got a big army and then went across the map and attacked, he would have been able to do very well. But instead, I don't know, it's almost like he got overly fancy. He went into charge, Colossus, which didn't really allow him to, like if you can't really go for Colossus and High Templars and Storm off of 3 bases that comfortably in the first place, because it's very gas heavy composition. So he skipped on Storm for a long time, and then the Colossi, I mean, it's not like he could really attack with them because Stephano was making enough units, so then he waited until he was maxed out, but even then, like his army, I don't feel like it looked as strong as it should have, as quickly as it should have, so that just didn't work out. I don't know if he was playing scared or if that's something that he thinks, you know, was as good as playing a little bit more standard, but I wouldn't mind for him to just go into... Showtime, if you watch him against Zerg, every time he does any kind of attack early on, even if it's Glaives, he'll almost always go into Storm behind this very comfortably and make it look extremely good. So it's the go-to, and I definitely feel like those Storm builds, they look better than opening up with Colossus after any kind of attack.
Yeah, I agree. In this game, we're waiting to see, especially if DnS is going to get a Stargate and if he's going to try to deny that first Overlord that comes out. Because as a theme, we've seen that DnS is very interested in keeping his opponent in the dark, which of course makes perfect sense, especially against a good Zerg player like Stephano. But you know, does he have that kind of variety? I don't feel like DnS can win a game with a technique like he used in Game 1. I feel like that's a strat that'll win one game in a series. I don't know. So we have the Twilight Council coming here now.
It's almost unusual. You see a Stargate almost every single game.
Right.
But sometimes the Protosses, they go for a little bit of a throwback build where they go for Twilight, Robo, and then they get a Dark Shrine. Go for some Archons or some DTs and just kind of be aggressive. But in this game, we did not have a Stalker to try and deny the Overlord from scouting anything, and Stephano will be happy to take the information. How do you like Backwater, Tasteless? I know you love all these maps, like you always talk extensively about the bridges and stuff that we have. How about Backwater? Any features?
This, I'm working on something. I'm still looking for a long bridge where you can put an Archon to block. What was that map that I always said that on anyways?
I don't remember the name.
I don't know. Well, that's what I was doing in one game, and then I kind of got excited about it, and I just started bringing it up in all these other games. There wasn't a lot of maps that had that really narrow, long bridge.
Hey, it was never wrong. You could always put an Archon.
You could put an Archon, yeah, exactly. But we'll see. We'll see what happens here. Hold up. 2 more gates going down now, and Glaives is on the way. What you were talking about earlier, Todd, with the throwback build, I think that's an important thing to note, is it's not like as the meta in StarCraft progresses, the old builds should be eliminated and never used again. They can actually be reincorporated later on. And that can absolutely throw a player off. Just because a build's not trendy now doesn't mean it's not good, even if it was great.
It's more like they counter each other, and the new build usually is very good against the old build. So then the other race has to do the new build as well. But then if one of them does the old build, it's good against the new build. So they kind of counteract one another. But in this case, DnS is just going for Glaives. It's going to be a lot of adepts. And I mean, in the previous game, I did think he had done enough damage. Like, he wasn't, you know, definite after the attack. Like, I don't think he was in a position where like he couldn't lose anymore or barely lose. He goes for almost an old school transition as well with the double Stargate. We used to see this. So by going for mass adepts like this, these player has to only get ground and focus on defending grounds. And now this is going to be denied as well, the scouting, by killing that Overlord. And then off the back of this, you go into a lot of Phoenixes or Oracle usually. In this case, he gets the +1 air weapon, so I think he's going to be Phoenixes for a little bit of a Rotty-esque build here that can do very well, especially if not spotted.
Yeah, this is a 2-part strategy. So the Zerg is alarmed and reacting to the adepts, but there's a follow-up blindsiding blow that can actually flip the game on its head. Now, will he pool these Phoenixes and wait for a specific moment, or will he come out? I mean, there's benefits to both. You know, with the 2 Stargates, that's what allows you to have these Phoenixes coming out with such momentum that it's hard for the Zerg to adapt to it. And it looks like, at least for now, he's going to be tanking them. Oh, sick! Now, as good as the Phoenixes are, you do need the adepts on the ground to actually combo with them. So losing those is pretty bad. Despite the idea of what DnS is doing is pretty cool, if he doesn't execute it correctly, he's going to lose anyways.
By the way, Stephano, his creep spread has been unreal here this series. In the previous game already, he was so helpful for him to have so much vision, bring the spores over, but in this game again, he's already at the middle of the map. That helped a lot here against the adepts just now. That gave him the vision and the speed for him to catch them and kill a bunch of them. So now we got the Phoenixes flying across the map, but I mean, the Hydralisk den is already finished, I believe, on the other side of the map. And Stephano should be fine if he just makes the right amount of Hydralisks, and then from there he can decide what kind of game does he want to go into. Look at how many spores he started. Yeah, Stephano cannot be bothered with his style.
This is really smart. And, you know, you're right. Once he gets enough Hydras out, the Phoenixes have a very, very difficult time trying to engage. Because Phoenixes, as scary as they can be in big numbers, they're actually pretty brittle units. And if they're not protected correctly, they will just get mowed down. We do also see DnS getting a robo now, as he can't just keep making Phoenixes forever and expect to close this game out. But I think...
Yeah, only Roddy can do that.
Yeah, only Roddy, only the great Roddy. And that's why you don't let him play in this tournament and ruin it and win the whole thing. We keep him at the analysis desk. But
on a leash.
It's right. But I'm a little bit worried here. I feel like Stephano went the more tried and true tech path, and DnS tried to be sneaky. And although he is getting kills on drones and overlords, I am worried this is not going to pan out well.
Yeah, I mean, right now we have DnS transitioning into charge, getting the robo. He's going to be starting some upgrade here. And Stephano actually, oh my god, that's almost the least likely scenario. He goes for a Spire. I think he knows that DnS will be transitioning, so he's like, oh, actually DnS overextending here a little bit with the things.
This might look counterintuitive too to a lot of the people watching. You're like, what?
Yeah.
But he's already a bunch of Phoenixes out.
I think he wants to get Corruptors.
Yeah.
And try and deal with the Phoenixes, and then he'll be the mobile one. He can fly from one base to another, use Caustic Spray to try and snipe some Nexus.
Exactly. He's going to flip the air game here. Especially with these Phoenixes staying back. I don't believe he didn't scout the Spire, did he?
No.
So yeah, he doesn't know. So this is a pretty smart transition here for Stephano. Now, with this fourth base that's being taken, the Phoenixes can still get a little bit abusive and try to eat up the drones as they get transferred there. So we do want to watch for that. And now it looks like they're going to try to come through and do a little bit of scouting, but still not getting into that area where he can actually spot the next tech path that Stephano is going for.
Yeah, and from there, like, it's very hard for DnS to actually read into this properly. Like, he's seeing a bunch of Hydralisks, but it's not a number where he's looking at it and he's like, okay, something's missing. Stephano's gas, though, is not that massive just yet. He starts 7 Overlords. Okay, Stephano is like, I don't ever want to get supply blocked ever again. I want to keep looking at that beautiful supply, and it's never going to be red.
It's got to keep growing. It's got to keep getting bigger. Oh, nice little denial there. That was actually pretty sneaky by Stephano. Popping the Nexus before it was able to get enough HP. And this is really just Stephano trying to stay a few inches ahead of his opponent here. That was something that DnS was not actually able to cancel. So, you know, not the biggest deal in the world, but a nice little play tactically there by Stephano to punish his opponent.
There's a chance Stephano might be counting on DnS going for Colossi. In which case, if he goes Phoenix into Colossus, you get Corruptors, you snipe the Phoenixes, and then you work on the Colossus very well. And then he can go into also Broodlords very comfortably, as we see the Infestation Pit now on the way for Stephano. And I love that he hasn't committed to Corruptors yet, because if you get it wrong, you die. That's right. The thing about it.
Okay, so we see those Phoenixes once again coming in here and trying to snag some of those drones. And he's got to be careful because he's actually can get somewhat boxed in if you're not moving quickly enough with him. Stephano again expanding here in the very center northern part of the map. It's going to be a little bit, I think, before DnS can actually push out. And similar to the previous game we have, Stephano's been pretty on top of creep spread, arcing out across the map. He's got a lot of... it's not like the spread is everywhere on the map, but it's in locations where the Zerg can try to fight the Protoss before the Protoss can get to the Zerg's bases.
It's been pretty consistent. And for DnS not to be doing anything about it, it could end up being a problem. We saw in Game 2 how much that creep helped for Vision, for bringing the Spores over and all that. Definitely something good that Stephano doesn't. By the look of things, Stephano is not going to be going for any sort of Corruptors. He starts Pathogen Glands, so I think he's going to want to take the same route that we saw in Game 2 with a lot of Infestors, probably Spores being added on later if he's facing some kind of air, because in this game we don't have Colossi being used.
Well, this is smart. And, you know, you could always use the Spire at any point in time. Is when you have the tech up, okay, great. But I think this is a good move here by Stephano. If it worked in Game 2, why would it not work in Game 3? And I think Stephano, even when the pressure's on, is actually maybe most comfortable in these phases of the game. He likes going to the outer limits of StarCraft. And it is a different beast. I mean, you can be good at rushes and timing attacks all day, but getting into this slow, dragging, methodical late game ZVP is a totally different animal. By the way, Stephano continuing to creep spread out of here. And you were mentioning this earlier, Todd, but I do feel like this is kind of going uncontested here by DnS. And eventually it's going to be the map painted purple with a little bit of red blips at the bottom right. And DnS is going to have to go it's going to be like a campaign mission where the Zerg has the whole map. And he's going to have to go out and try to actually clear some of this territory.
You know, it's crazy to think about that. You know, Stephano, it feels like he has to play his absolute best here to, you know, maybe barely get a win over DnS. If he wins here, he faces Stats in the next match. Stats is waiting. He won his first match.
By the way, the games like this are very exhausting, and when marathons like this, that can be huge. Hold up. The Banelings are coming in now. Storm's going down. DnS not bad on the engages, but are there too many Hydras? Okay, those Banelings did not get the value they needed to have in that exchange.
Not. And some Storms landed on top of these Hydras. Like they're gonna be lower on hit points than here on full. And Stephano is trying to replenish that. DnS has the warp in, and this time he went for the army that I think he should have gone for last game. No Colossus shenanigans, no slowing down the game.
Well, this is an army that it's pretty robust. Like it's got a lot of sustainability on the map.
There is no ground army of Zerg that this.
This angling here is actually tricky on for both sides here, since your screen can't actually cover everything that you're trying to micro. And it looks like he's actually found a little chink in the armor. We have DnS trying to push through. The static defense close to completing, but not done yet. The Immortals here are going to be very strong against these as they finish, and almost no damage from the spines. The remaining Hydras are getting picked up, and it seems like he's actually chiseled his way in. He will take the space out, and he has the opportunity to then go punish the northern base as well.
The spines finally finished, but they do very bad against this many Immortals, especially if those are upgraded. Stephano trying to scramble, trying to stay alive. If he could get to some sort of hive tech with a lot of infestors, he might be able to do well, but right now, DnS is going for the kill, and he's not slowing down.
Yeah, he did not try to take out that northern base. Instead, he's going to try to pierce into the heart of where the tech is, and if he wins this fight, Stephano will be losing this match. We see the Zealots beginning to spill forward now. A lot of the units retreating onto the high ground. The Warp Prism, an attempted snipe coming up here. Observers and the Warp Prism going down. Looks like these Immortals will take out the Baneling's nest. And we actually have like broodlings being made literally on top of the army. If these Archons can come over here, they can start to damage that. I'm worried that even if the Broodlord's finished and this army's wiped out, the damage has already been dealt.
Yeah, I don't think they could do much here, even if he was to save this somehow. I mean, there's still so many Immortals left over. 3 Broodlords are gonna finish, but Archons are taking them head on.
DnS actually able to deny Stephano from getting the game to the place that he wanted to. It was a much later time in attack, but there's really nothing that Stephano can do. You can already see that Void Rays are being made as well as additional Stargates.
Oh, he recalls.
Beautiful.
Damn, it's so easy to forget about recall, but DnS didn't. He's like, you know what, I'm out of here. There is no exit, but somehow there is one.
Yeah, well, it's funny because he did exactly enough damage. And then when he sees that he's not going to get, it'll be diminishing returns at that point in time if he left the army there, he leaves. And to suicide these Zealots over here onto the hatch, or I guess he's actually just going to fight whatever's remaining since there aren't Broodlords here to try to help out, it is a smart move. And if you look at the supplies, it's 77 to 142. We know you're looking, my Todd. Supply. But I don't see any way Stephano can recover from here. And DnS is being pretty smart about how he's following this up.
He's buying time, he's getting Tempest, he's already got some Void Rays, so Stephano obviously, you know, he's showing some good resilience. Obviously he wants to try and stay in this and somehow come back, but I mean, DnS is doing everything right, and I love the adjustment, you know, to go for the right army, to go for so many Immortals and High Templars. I mentioned it even before, like he did it. I think that's the right army to try and counter what Stephano goes for. He did it, gets a very convincing win here. It looks like DnS, he lost to SOS, a Korean Protoss in Pyeongchang. He's going to get another crack at another Korean Protoss in stats in round 2 here.
I do wonder if Stephano is just like processing the loss at this point in time. I mean, the fact that DnS has continued to grow and occupy more of the map, where Stephano's base is in shambles. He's trying to remap out his tech tree. And you know, although the creep spread is good, that's not going to do much more than allow you to see the army that's coming at you that you can't beat. So this is tough. And DnS with a cool air transition here, while still having a pretty healthy ground army because he did do that good recall. That looks like he's going to try to come out now and push since he's maxed out.
I'm surprised Stephano's staying. I mean, looking at this army, it must almost be, you know, depressing at this point. He barely has anything. 42 army supply to 118. That was very well played by DnS. You know, it's not like everything went right for him from the start of the game or anything. No, like he went across the map, tried to be a little bit aggressive, kept on expanding, went for the right army composition, and just played as you're meant to play against this kind of army from Zerg. And I mean, after the way the game number 2 went, I'm not surprised that DnS didn't try to sit around forever and play like a super long game.
You know, it's going to be tough. There's really no way for Stephano to recover unless DnS makes a major blunder. You can see what he's trying to do by having these Hydras that were moving around trying to counterattack. You can exploit the fact that this is a sluggish army here from DnS, but it's an inevitability that he will push across the map. We see these Zealots now coming out to kill drones and other tech structures, trying to avoid the Broodlings as much as they can, as DnS is slowly arcing north, and he'll be coming over here to try to smash this base. And this is one of these moments where you have this big army, and there's a very like precise zigzag you do with the army from base to base to base to clear out all these locations. And while he does that, he'll have the Zealots, as you can see here, to try to force the Zerg army to relocate and defend that when the real big attack is about to come in right here, right now.
It's going to take more than a beautiful fungal for Stephano to win this. He's going to take a tasteless fungal.
It was, yeah, man. And
this was not a tasteless.
This is not a tasteless. I'm afraid. No. You can see the Void Rays, or Tempest, excuse me, actually chucking those projectiles. There's nothing Stephano can do, and that's GG. Actually a really cool series we saw there, and you could see DnS and Stephano adapting to each other, but ultimately it was in game number 3 that DnS was able to crush through and really stop the game right before it got to that Supreme late game where Stephano is at his best.
He stayed calm and patient, which after game 2 not everybody would have been able to do. You know, like it's almost like a mind-breaking game, the second map that we saw.
We're going to go to a short break. When we come back, more StarCraft action here at the Intel Extreme Masters.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice. We just had our first match conclude, and we saw DnS take down Stephano. So first of all, congratulations, DnS. I was looking at your record against Stephano, and you actually went against him quite a bit. 10 official matches, and you're up 8-2. So what do you think it is that makes you so good against him?
I think it could be like a clash of styles, because he likes to play late game a lot, and I know he's pretty defensive. I play him a lot on ladder, and I know his ults, so like this is why on Blackpink, for example, I went for this specific attack. I knew it would most likely work. And yeah, I guess Stephano took a very long break, and I've been playing non-stop for like years, so yeah, I guess that's the main reason.
Well, I definitely want to talk about Neon Violet Square because there was a point where you were looking in great shape, and then it turned into that late game that you just talked about, and Stephano ran away with the win. So what happened there?
So I think first of all, the map is pretty good for Zerg in late game. I thought I would take it, but even though I was in a great position, I think maybe I should have went for the kill with Colossus and Storm. I was maybe slightly a little bit indecisive at this moment. I think that cost me the game. And also, Stephano is very good in late game. I lived with him like 1 month in Korea. He was playing late game all day long, so I guess he was pretty prepared for that, yeah.
Well, now you're moving forward in this open bracket, and it's a really, really tough bracket. Your bracket has so many Korean players left and right, and you're facing Stats next. So what are your thoughts on him and this bracket overall?
Yeah, I think the bracket is pretty tough. It's doable, but it's very difficult, obviously. But yeah, Stats is like one of the players I look up the most to. Like I watch his games, I get inspired a lot by him. So it feels a bit weird to play against him, but yeah, I guess playing on the Korean ladder helped me. I gained a lot of confidence because you're like, oh, these guys are so good, how to beat them. And then suddenly you're like top 16 GM, you realize, I guess I can do it. So even though he's obviously favored, I think I can show good games, yeah.
Sounds really great. We'll see if the practice in Korea pays off. Best of luck. James, back to you.
That's right. Thank you very much, Smix. Welcome back to Games Corner here, as we've got many, many games rolling on. We have Puck and knocking out Jacko down in the lower bracket, and we also have Bly knocking out Lillikinen down there as well. Trying to keep you up to date with as much as possible here in this bracket. Going to be checking in with the boys as well, as they've had quite a few games go on throughout the tournament so far. TY versus Seoul was one of your series, Artos.
Yes.
What went down?
Well, game one, TY versus Seoul, I felt like Seoul was doing a good job. We did show it a little bit where he was running around pressuring a bit, and he even made like a very strong drop into the main base, but TY was standard classic TY. He kept most of his army back to defend and did massive damage with like 2 medevacs across the map, killing command centers and stuff. So just kind of like whittling him down over time, not taking too much damage himself. Their second map was actually on Backwater, and once again we saw TY go for the Marine tank style.
Right.
And actually Seoul went for mech, and I mean he was doing his best trying to defend, but TY was everywhere. This guy is probably the best TVT player in the world, so I'm not surprised he wins. But I gotta say, Seoul is playing some good games today for sure.
Yeah, he will go down to the lower bracket. Will Seoul there and be fighting against other opponents in the near future, of course. Let's check in with Pig as well. Pig, you have Probe versus Mamba currently going on in the lower bracket, I believe.
Yeah, Probe is up 1 game. Nice Colossus push in game number 1 to close it out. Relatively straightforward win there for Probe. He didn't get any kind of surprising damage done with his Oracle. But here in game number 2, he's actually opened up with a double Oracle and a Void Ray, which he actually went into the main base with, got a lot of damage done in the early game. So he's up to 20 workers killed, and now it's kind of stabilizing in this later stage where we see this big Lurker Roach army, a little bit of a weird composition from Mamba, up against, of course, Probe's Colossus and now Storm. So this one's just kind of powering into the late game. We're waiting for those big decisive engagements to happen. No doubt just going to be a matter of time until that comes down. But Probe looking good in the series so far. And I mean, we might actually see a big fight right now. So maybe we can watch for a few seconds longer here.
Keep on it. Of course, one of these players losing here means that they are done in the tournament, this being the lower bracket. And that is a lot of lurkers. But they have a revelation hit them. So that means at least he sees them. Good Storm to start things. Hey, I'm not a commentator. You go.
Oh, James can't help himself.
Oh, no.
Well, it's funny, you know, he's attacking from the west, not from the north or the south right now.
No, not quite.
But I'm sure he was thinking about it. And we're actually going to see Probe try and break it through. 13 lurkers. Going to do some massive ground damage. But I mean, there's a lot of immortals in there, so very well done.
Yeah, indeed. And warping on the right-hand side as well. Even with hallucinated Archons to try and draw some of the fires from those lurkers. And that should be cleaned up there here by the Protoss. Very, very well done. Cleaning up the rest of that army. I think what we should do is we should shift focus actually with that engagement concluding because we want to check in with Rotterdam here. This fight is about to go down on laptop 1.
And this is going to decide this series, and I think it's not looking all that good for Stalkers. As you guys can see, Stalkers have been dying left, right, and center. He's only been hitting from the south, James, and that's just a problem because this one tank has been pushing out a lot of damage. Krr is super all in with this build, only has 22 probes at home. Widowmines has killed a lot. These Stalkers Stalkers will die, and that's going to be it. Ryong takes the series, but it was a 2-1 victory. And before we wrap this all up, I just want to talk real quick about game number 2, because game 2 was hilarious, guys.
Oh, yes.
We were watching it together, and we were all just basically we were like, what on earth are we watching? So what happened is that Krr went for a one-base all-in, Protoss, you know, proxy gateway, proxy void ray. Ryong went for an orbital, an expand. He floated it to his main, and he proxied the starport, but he underestimated the power of the void ray and the gateway units, so Krr actually broke in, killed the Marines, got on top of the tank, killed the tanks, basically started killing everything, but at the same time he has nothing at home. So there are 2 Cloak Banshees killing all his probes at home, and it turns into this weird base trade where Ryong has 1 SCV and Krr actually has 1 probe, eventually gets some money, gets a second probe, but the Cloak Banshees are being very annoying, and then Ryong has money for 1 Viking, and he's microing, and he kills the Void Ray, and we're like, oh my god, that's it. But then this 1 probe gets enough money for another Void Ray, so then the new Void Ray shows up, and there's this epic dance that goes on for like 4 minutes, with an Oracle tagging the Cloak Banshee, Banshee running away. Moment the Revelation is out, he kills one of the Stalkers, we're like, oh my god, he's doing it, and then somehow the 2 probes mined enough for a Phoenix, and that ruined the party, and that was the end of it. It was really fun.
It was a sick game.
That Phoenix, a bit faster than everything else, so he's able to deal with things pretty well. And actually, with that win that we see Ryong taking there, also checking in with your game, Artosis, with TY moving forwards as well. TY will go up against Ryong here in a qualifying match going up next for group stage. So that's a big, big deal indeed. Thank you very much for all the updates, gentlemen. A pleasure to be able to get to look at all of these games going on, and the little commentator inside of me really wants to get going again. Maybe one day. Probably not now. But for now, we're going to check in with the bracket to get you up to date with everything that's gone down so far here, as we do have that confirmed for the TY versus Ryong match up towards the top. That's a big one.
The entire top 8, only Terran and Protoss?
Whoa.
What? Guys, cherish it while you can, because this is not gonna last forever.
Especially when we get to bracket 2 and there's a lot of good Zergs in there.
I know.
All right, let's take a look at the lower bracket as well. As you can see, those 2 results that came in, with Bly being able to eliminate Lilliknin and Puck moving through, eliminating Jacko. Still plenty more games to come. Kerr versus Bly might be an interesting one, to say the least, Rotterdam. That one's quite the fixture.
No, that's fun. Kerr is definitely a Protoss player that's a little bit out there, doesn't mind to take a risk. We saw a couple of silly games out of him already. Also solid though, and Bly is Bly, but I did run into Bly and he said he wasn't feeling super good, got a little bit sick, you know, with traveling. So hopefully he feels good enough to at least put on a good fight. I don't know, I would still kind of favor Bly there, but you never know.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Time now to head to a break here at the Intel Extreme Masters. And when we come back, we continue our open brackets, as we're still in pretty much that round of 76. Not many players have been eliminated just yet.